Friends, welcome back. We're going to be joined by the Republican and conservative candidate for governor of the great state of New York, the Honorable Marc Molinaro. Welcome, sir.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks. This is my first time in the studio.
Well, it's a delight to have you here.
Oh, well, don't say that yet. I mean,
it's right.
It's early.
Governor debates. It looks like he doesn't want to talk to you.
He doesn't. And he wants to do it his way, just like with Cynthia Nixon. Remember when they had that debate in New York City and they didn't talk about anything about upstate? So this morning he's on CBS Radio and he says, sure, I'll debate him tomorrow. He's insignificant, he calls me. Insignificant. And I'll debate him tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Listen, we're not doing it Andrew Cuomo's way. That's why Albany is in the trouble it's in. It's why taxes are too high. It's why we have the corruption we have, because everybody does it his way. We're not doing that. Elections are not about the candidates. They're about the voters. And so I'm happy to debate him. I want to debate him. He's agreed to one-on-one. Let's do it at a time where all New Yorkers can participate, where Rochester residents can listen, where folks in Buffalo get to ask questions, because he doesn't care about the voters. He's just in a steady march to wanting to win more and more power. And there are too many people, I think, that are being hurt because of it.
And there's an aspect of his personality I don't like so much. Typically, when you have all the marbles, you can act magnanimous.
Yes.
Here's a fellow with $9 million in the bank. Here's a fellow who's got a lead in the polls. Here's a fellow who's been governor for 2 terms, and yet he seems to take delight. Instead of enjoying the lead and the comfort, he could be magnanimous. He wants to stick it to you and twist the knife.
Yes, you're absolutely right, and it's a character flaw. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, and I don't want to judge the guy, but it's a character flaw. I've always been the guy. I've held elected office since I was 19 years old, elected mayor, but I've always been the guy that people think are going to win. I've always debated. I've never once attacked my opponents in any campaign literature, because I think it's important to show a degree of humility and respect for the process. I don't think he has that. And worse yet, he doesn't seem to show respect to the voters. And voters deserve to have the candidates before them.
A debate is not about you.
It's not at all.
At all. It's about laying out ideas, listen, decide, see what we have to say.
That's it. That's what it's about.
That's Marc Molinaro. We're going to stop, get some news. We'll be back right after with him on News Radio WHAM 1180. Thanks, Ted. Appreciate that. Troops, I appreciate you showing up for Mustard. Hope all is cool and copacetic on your end. Honored to be here with Marc Molinaro, Republican conservative candidate for governor of this fair state. Polls come out, and we've stopped talking about issues, seems like, in America, and we just want to know numbers.
Right.
And the polls say, oh, my gosh, Molinaro's trailing. What do you say to that?
I'm trailing. I mean, that's the way it is. But I wear this pin. This is my underdog pin. I got into the race knowing that I was the underdog. But then again, there are so many New Yorkers that are underdogs. I mean, they look up at a state government that doesn't pay attention to them, is divorced from their realities, doesn't make it easier for them. So our position is very simple. This is a winnable race. It is absolutely winnable. Andrew Cuomo has led the most corrupted state government in America. We shoulder the highest burden of taxes of any people in America. There's opportunity there. And what I say to voters, in particular upstate, is you have the capacity to win this election. You do. So many times I come to a community upstate and they'll say to me, yeah, but the votes in New York, that's how we lose. In New York City. It's not true. New York City doesn't represent a majority of the votes in the state of New York. We do. And so Republicans and Democrats upstate can take a chance on somebody who actually believes in public service, who really understands how tough it is to live in New York. And my message to them is set aside party politics just for a moment. I'm under no illusion. I will get 4 years to do this right. That's it. If I win, it will be a minor political miracle. But miracles are sometimes what we need. We need the ability to say to ourselves, we can do better than who we are today. And I give them that opportunity, and then I will go home.
Marc Molinaro is a gubernatorial candidate. To the Democrats who may be listening, why should they trust you?
I have a long record of working across party lines, and I don't govern by ideology. I have no tolerance for it. I hire the best and brightest, regardless of party affiliation, to do their job. I've never picked people based on party politics. And at the end of the day, I'm an ordinary New Yorker. I grew up on food stamps. My parents divorced when I was very young. My daughter benefits from Medicaid services. She was born with a disability. I know what it's like to struggle in the state of New York, and I'm not going to try to dictate to people. I just want to bring people together to solve problems. And the problems we face are we're too expensive. We have a government that's too arrogant, and too often we don't get what we pay for, whether it's in education or kids living in generational poverty or the erosion of infrastructure. Those are not partisan issues. I want to work together to solve a problem, and I promise you this, again, knowing that it's unlikely that I ever get a shot at this twice. We will have 4 years to do it. And so I will do it based on outcomes, and I will do it in the best interest of the people of New York.
Talking to Marc Molinaro, and it's advantageous that you are an upstater.
Oh yeah. Well, listen, to you, I might not be. I just want to make clear that
Sure.
I come from the Hudson Valley. So some days, when I'm upstate, you think I'm downstate. When I'm downstate, they think I'm upstate. But we look like upstate. I mean, our communities, small villages. I was a mayor of a village of 1,300 residents on the Hudson River. Eroding infrastructure, business community isn't vibrant as it once was. High property taxes. I know the upstate issues. I've lived the upstate life, and I will defend, support, and fight for upstate New Yorkers. But we also need a governor who's going to bring the entire state together and try to inform and educate downstate as to the needs of upstate, so that there is the appropriate balance. But I'll tell you this: you'll see me a lot more often than you've ever seen the existing governor. I will be in the community working with mayors to address poverty and crime that we've seen in our cities, working with not-for-profits and community organizations to address issues that face families. You will have me here as a partner.
TV ads, we're speaking of Marc Molinaro, TV ads the governor's been running say, oh, you're a bad guy and you're not clean and we need to worry about you. What's the story with that?
Well, there's a saying, right? Pot, here's talk to the kettle. Listen, the governor wants nothing more than to point the finger at me than to address what has been 8 years of corruption in his administration. But that said, listen, the ads are not true. They're just not. I'm not perfect. No one is. But I strive to do right. I believe in the dignity of public service. I believe in the responsibility to be held accountable to taxpayers. And if ever I've been in a position where something went wrong, I acknowledge it, I fix it, and we move on together. I think we deserve that from elected officials. And what he wants to do is demean and dismiss, to somehow make me equivalent to him. We are not. In fact, one of his ads attacks my wife, of all things, suggesting something that just isn't true. Imagine a man who thinks that's okay. I mean, just imagine that for a moment, that he thinks that dragging family into a political debate is acceptable. I've never once talked about his significant other. I don't talk about his children. I don't talk about family. This is a race for the voters of New York, and they deserve two adults who are mature enough to stand before the public and be held accountable. I'm willing to do that.
Speaking with Marc Molinaro, and you hear these ads, the Conservative Party say, vote for you on their line. Here's the deal. If I'm Joe Democrat or something like that, and damn if I'm going to vote for a Republican, the Democrats can vote on the conservative line.
They can. I'll take a risk. You can also find me on the Reform Party line. I am the Reform Party candidate because reformers across the state of New York believe that I will provide the best opportunity to reform the state of New York. So I tell folks, pick a line. Obviously, if you feel inclined, vote for me on the conservative line. If you want the reforms that we talk about, ethics reform, corruption, ending corruption in Albany, tax reform, we've proposed a 30% property tax cut over 5 years, and we'll do it. Maybe the Reform Party line is the place for you. Relative to ethics reform, we have this Gannett story out the other day, which shows he's collected $100 million over the course of his administration, and great parallels between people who make contributions and people who get government contracts. If you become our governor, speaking of Marc Molinaro, how do you make sure that doesn't happen? What do you change? We end it, and this is the way you end it. First, I'll appoint a real Moreland Commission. I've even joked, and I mean this half seriously, of appointing Zephyr Teachout and others who actually believe in holding government accountable. I want a Moreland Commission to root out corruption, but also to send chills down the spines of policymakers and legislators and anyone else who thinks it's okay to defraud taxpayers. I want a sheriff watching over their shoulders so that we can force these reforms: universal ethics code, independent ethics commission, and an end to pay to play. If you're doing business with New York for a period of time, you cannot contribute to the people making the decisions. This governor has traded your money, taxpayer money, in exchange for political contributions. I'm not making it up. It's been prosecuted. People have been found guilty, and there's still a federal investigation underway because of an exchange of $25 million for campaign contributions going to the governor. We'll put that to an end. The other is I will force a vote on up or down on term limits. 2 4-year terms for state office holders, statewide office holders, 6 2-year terms for state legislators. I'll demand a vote, and I'll hold myself to it. The million move-outs, how do we stop that trend? Lower property taxes. Property taxes are the one thing that makes New York so seismically less competitive. So we have a plan over 5 years to cut property taxes by 30%. It is achievable. We also expand certain benefits to low-income and middle-income families. And we provide a greater tax relief to small businesses, not big businesses, small businesses, the ones on main streets all across the state. By doing that, we drive down cost and will make New York more competitive. competitive. We also focus on regulation. The governor thinks that whatever works in New York City should be imposed on everybody else. I don't. I think that we need to be very considerate of the fact that small business owners all across this state, backbone of our economy, struggling every day to make ends meet, but they also do something else. Business owners in Rochester, business owners in Buffalo, they keep people on the payroll even when they can't afford to, because they know that mom who's serving at the diner can't afford to pay for daycare for a kid without it, or her son won't go off to football or baseball without that job. They contribute to charities, not-for-profits, and firehouses, and they offer sponsorships even when they know they can't afford it. There is a real social commitment that small business owners have to the community. They should be embraced, they should be supported, and they should be helped to grow.
Speaking to Marc Molinaro, and forgive what may be a very regional question here, but we're concerned about Second Amendment and guns and stuff like that. Pataki, Republican, kind of screwed us over. Understanding you've got a big state with a lot of people, many of whom are not fond of firearms. What's the right thing to do? What would you do as governor?
The right thing to do is to defend the Second Amendment, and by the way, all of the amendments of the Constitution, but also to ensure that those who are violent, those who have severe mental health issues or may act out in a violent way, don't have access to a firearm. But I do not believe what the governor's done is right. He's infringed on the rights of law-abiding citizens. Now, I say to people all the time, there are policies in New York City that many felt infringed upon the civil liberties of New Yorkers, stop and frisk and some others. They speak up, and the policy gets adjusted because, frankly, it infringes on the civil liberties of New Yorkers. Well, the Second Amendment right is one of those civil liberties that we have, and therefore governments infringing on that can't just happen callously. And what the governor does is check the box and pretend like everything's solved without any consideration for the fact that he's made criminals out of law-abiding citizens. I'll tell you this, I'm sorry to drag on this answer, but I know you'll appreciate this. I go to work on Market Street in Poughkeepsie. That's where my office is, right next to the county courthouse. Do you know what happened on Market Street in Poughkeepsie? In the late 1780s, a group of New Yorkers came together to ratify the Constitution in the state of New York on Market Street at the county courthouse in Dutchess County in Poughkeepsie, New York. And a gentleman that you'll know made a case that New York would not ratify the Constitution without a celebration of individual liberties. Alexander Hamilton on my block. Every day I pass that courthouse. Do you think that I don't appreciate the Bill of Rights? That I don't appreciate what they meant? What they said was a unified government needed to celebrate and protect the individual liberties of the people who run and own the government, the citizens. That's a powerful statement that shouldn't be overrun or cast aside for political benefit.
Marc Molinaro, candidate for governor of the fair state of New York. Not to be negative, but Governor Cuomo is often angry. If there's a emotion, a mood, or a word that describes what you are, basically, what is it?
Kind. I hate to say it. I'm not weak, but I'm kind. I feel for the challenges that other people have. I think, by the way, growing up on food stamps, you begin to appreciate that you're not in charge of anything. In many ways, you're reliant on other people, which means you got to work harder. And having a child with a disability, you begin to appreciate the very special aspect of everything that's special about life. That every life has value, every little thing is worth celebrating. And in a time where we seem to be overcome by anger, and we seem very quick to rush to anger. I think leaders should provide calm. I think that we should be firm in our beliefs. But I think kindness is not the worst thing. Now, somebody's listening, thinking, "Oh, blah," they're vomiting into their coffee. But I would tell you that it's important that leaders show empathy and respect, and perhaps that's all wrapped up in that one word.
This is a lame question. I apologize. I asked it of Donald Trump once. Is there a Bible verse or story that has informed your thinking or actions in life?
If my people would humble themselves and yell out my name, I shall hear them from heaven.
Outstanding.
That's a bit of a paraphrase.
I was.
Passage.
It's a funny thing. I was at a nonviolence vigil about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the pastor threw that out on a street corner as the one he thought.
And I offer, whether you believe in a higher authority or not, prayer is not something to be dismissed. There's something about being humble. and knowing that we're not in charge. And again, maybe you don't believe in, I know you do, but maybe you don't believe in a higher authority. We're still not in charge.
Sure,
100%. And therefore humbling ourselves and calling for help is not the worst thing to happen in your life.
Amen. A last question. What do you want people to know? What's the pitch there? Why are you the man? Why ought we to follow you?
This government is bankrupt. This state government is morally, ethically, and legislatively, financially bankrupt. And we need a governor who truly appreciates how hard it is to live in New York. I care about the people of the state of New York. I care about getting the job done right. And I care about making sure that we work together to solve the problems that face New Yorkers. And so I'm asking for your vote.
Outstanding. Marc Molinaro, it's always a delight to speak with you. It's an honor to meet you. Thanks for being in our town. Best of luck to you.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
God bless you, my friend. We'll be back in just a moment on News Radio WHAM 1180. Welcome back, troops. The music means I talked far too long in the